Maranatha, and welcome to the Septuagint versus the Masoretic, the only ministry in the world that compares the Septuagint, which is the version of scriptures that existed 300 years before Jesus Christ came to this earth, with the Masoretic text, which is the version of scriptures that came after Jesus Christ had died and was resurrected about 300 years afterwards, and was not fully complete until 1,000 years after. Today we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 22. This is a difficult chapter to cover. There are 30 verses in this chapter, and it contains one of the most controversial laws in the entire scriptures, in the entire Holy Bible. And it talks about the virginity test. So let's get into this and discuss this. I also believe from this chapter, we will see that women should not wear pants. So that's the subtitle of the main subject, which is the virginity test. So beginning in verse 1, we see a difference of when you see the calf versus you shall not see. It also says overlook. You shall not overlook them, talking about the calf, versus you shall not hide yourself from them. A continuous difference is by all means versus in any case, and an omission in this verse is you shall not, or I should say you shall restore them to him. In verse 2, we see come near you, talking about your brother, versus be not near unto you. So the focus in the Septuagint is location. In the Masoretic, it could be location, or it could be your relationship with your brother. In verse 3, a continuous difference is noticed in have power versus have power to overlook, which is having the authority to overlook, versus to hide yourself. In verse 5, we see that law regarding men and women wearing certain clothes. So we can see in the Septuagint, it says the apparel of a man shall not be on a woman. In the Masoretic, it says the woman shall not wear that which pertains unto a man. So I believe in the Septuagint, it is saying that women shall not wear men's clothing, versus you have a possible loophole here that where women can wear what belongs to a man. So if a man owns women's clothing, or I should say owns men's clothing, then a woman should not wear that. But anyhow, it is somewhat of a loophole that someone can use to say, I can wear that because it belongs to a man. If a man owns women's clothing is what I'm trying to say. So someone can use this to say that scripture contradicts itself, but no, it is saying specifically men's clothing. And back then, it was obvious what that meant. It's talking here about a woman's dress. Neither shall a man put on a woman's dress. Very specific as to what that is. It's a dress, which is usually a one-piece garment consisting of a top part and a skirt, a long skirt, usually covers all the way down to the ankles. In the Masoretic, it's talking about a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment. So that is a little more vague as to what that means. It doesn't have to necessarily be a dress. In verse 6, it is described a brood of birds versus a nest, a bird's nest. It describes the mother as a mother versus a dam. In verse 8, skipping ahead there, we see the word parapet used, which is a wall or a railing, versus a battlement, which is essentially a synonym for parapet. In verse 9, we see the word devoted, the fruit be devoted, which means to give up to, which can be expanded to mean to give up control or abandon, to cease. So This is talking about if you have a vineyard and you put another kind of fruit there, then the fruit will cease or give up control to the other fruit, which makes sense because it is competition. You're introducing a competitor into the vineyard. Versus in the Masoretic, it's describing your vineyard being defiled, meaning your vineyard is now corrupt, it is unclean, it has been violated. But we know that's not the case because that's not the way fruits act. A fruit will not corrupt another fruit and defile it. It's just common sense when you have two competing kinds of crops. One will possibly overtake the other or give up land to the other fruit, kind of like people. Verse 12, we see here borders, talking about the kind of garments we should wear. You shall make fringes on the four borders, which means the edges, the perimeter, or the frame, so all around. Versus the quarters in the Masoretic, which means division. So I think in some other area, I think there was in Leviticus, it spoke about the corners, but here it's saying quarters, so it is four divisions, which essentially would mean the same kind of thing as borders. So it is the frame. It's four divisions anyhow. And we see here that these garments are whatever you may be clothed in. So all clothing potentially. It doesn't have to just be the outer covering, which is what is implied, I think, in the Masoretic, that it is only the covering garment. And some, especially in the modern day in 2021, they interpret this to mean the outer garment or the coat. Verse 13, we see a huge difference. It's talking about if anyone should take a wife and dwell with her and hate her. So you're living with this wife. The Masoretic says you don't just take a wife, you go inside her. You have intercourse with her, essentially. So that's a big difference, living with a wife and having intercourse with her. In verse 14, reproachful words and bring against her an evil. So this is talking about that same woman. You're bringing up, attaching to her reproachful words versus occasions of speech against her. And it says here, I found not her tokens of virginity versus found her not a maid. They're very similar, but a token is an outward sign. So my initial understanding was most likely it is the part of the body called the hymen that needs to be intact. It is similar, but it's not as specific as how it's expressed in the Septuagint. In verse 15, the damsel's tokens of virginity versus the damsel's virginity. So it appears not to be the hymen. So what is it exactly? So verse 17 answers this, what this is. So in verse 17, there's an omission of, and now he has hated her. This is the father speaking, and now he hates her. So it's not just something that he hated her before they got married. No, he hated her. He developed that hate. So this is the token of virginity. It is when they unfold the garment, the elders will unfold the garment versus spread the cloth. So that's what it is. The token of virginity is a cloth. Verse 19, there's an omission of shekels. So that actually is not there in the Masoretic. They put that there because the Septuagint contains shekels. But they also added silver. So it's not certain what kind of metal it is, but it is shekels. And then it says here, never be able to put her away versus may not put her away. So it seems to be more stern and emphatic in the Septuagint, that you shall never be able to put her away. And it also says all his days in the Masoretic. In verse 21, it describes how the damsel who's proven not to be a virgin will be taken by the elders. Okay, I can't seem to find elders. Yeah, they bring out the damsel. So it's talking about the elders. But in the Masoretic, it's talking about the men of her city. So all the men in general, all ages, will join in this mass killing. There's an omission as well of to defile her father's, the house of her father was omitted. So that's one of the reasons why this is done. She's defiling the reputation and the house of her father, their namesake. And it's talking about the evil one in the Septuagint versus the evil. Again, in verse 22, same difference, wicked one versus evil. And then in verse 23, we see the word espoused being used, which means married or matched with. The latter seems more likely, in my opinion, since he is not referred to as her husband, but I'm actually wrong here because in the Masoretic it says they're betrothed or engaged, and it describes him as a man, and a man versus husband in the Masoretic. So he is not her husband until after the wedding, is how I understood it, versus he becomes her husband after the betrothal. In verse 24, their city versus the city. And it says here spouse, his neighbor's spouse versus wife. So it turns out the term husband is actually more appropriate as it is used in the Masoretic, which is rare, but this is one of those cases where the Masoretic seems to be more accurate in terms of describing what kind of man this is. This is specifically her husband. Verse 26, we see raping of a woman who is betrothed or matched or married is equated with murder. Let me just repeat that again. Let's try that again. The raping of a woman who is betrothed or matched or married is equated to murder. Okay, that's how serious this action is. The person that does this will face the death penalty. Yeah, that's how the law of God works. Verse 29, the man who lay with her, so this is not a loophole, the man is expected to take care of her and never divorce her. She is to be set for life. So some people will say, this man is taking advantage of the law and is basically finding a single woman who's not betrothed and humbling her, basically having intercourse with her. And yeah, rape. This is rape, but she's not married or engaged. And now he has to take care of her and can never divorce her. She is to be set for life, treated with respect and loved and provided both her physical needs and security for the rest of her life. So that's what the man is getting into. So I'm sure a lot of men will not be doing that if they have to sacrifice, everything in terms of their work and their money and providing for this woman and loving her. Otherwise, he's not fit to be with her, and she will be free to go. Verse 30, uncover his father's skirt, which may be similar to the nakedness, uncovering the nakedness of your father. So which means sleeping with your father's wife or concubine, or essentially the female companion of your father, whether it's biological or not. So there are a lot of arguments against this law, talking about the test of virginity on the internet. So since the sexual revolution in the 1960s, most of the Western world has lost its morality. We're so far away from where we used to be before that time, before the 60s. So the sanctity of marriage, the importance of a family consisting of a male father and a female mother taking care of their children has been watered down. the importance of families being the building block of society as well. It's not as significant today. When a woman sleeps around, she chooses to do this. This creates a society where there are single mothers. This creates a dire situation and also a tougher upbringing for the children. It's going to be not just challenging, but you're giving them something of a obstacle to overcome, to say the least. And you look at most households in poorer areas of the world and poorer neighborhoods, usually they are crime-ridden. There's a lot of drug abuse. Drugs are just pervading those areas. Lots of murders, thefts, etc. And that, I believe, stems from this behavior. This kind of behavior leads to anarchy and propagation of sin, which is, in essence, the spreading of hurt and pain that can be prevented if the marriage bed has not been defiled. And I'm not targeting women. I believe this applies for both men and women, because these laws, if you review it, you don't only put to death the woman who is sleeping around and claiming to be a virgin and lying about it, but the man as well who is going around raping women who are betrothed or married. And if he does that to a single woman, he has to take care of her. He can't just be sleeping around and not being ready to take care of her and love her. So failing the virginity test, in my opinion, is similar to adultery. The male equivalent, again, is men should marry the woman, or in the case of a man raping a woman who is betrothed, it is likewise just like the woman who fails the virginity test, he is executed. So I believe, again, men have an equal responsibility and accountability to remain chaste before marriage as well, but that is merely my opinion. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. Please subscribe, please like the video in order that I can afford more better equipment. I'm trying to improve the production quality of these videos moving forward. So I just thank you very much, and I pray that Yah bless you and make your way prosperous. Until next time, Maranatha.